Hello, Culture Matters podcast. I am so excited to introduce you to our guest. But before I do that, here's a quote just for this episode. The highest and most beautiful things in life are not to be heard about, nor read about, nor seen, but if one will, are to be lived. Soren Kierkegaard. Our guest today has lived. I've had the opportunity to meet them in person through somebody very special to our podcast. I've had the opportunity to have interactions with two of their 10 children, as far as I know, unless I've met some at Wawa, not realizing it. I've had the opportunity to interview one of their sons. Amazing episode, Adam Fedale, on episode 294 of the Culture Matters podcast. I challenge you all to listen to that episode after this episode. They're not only the founder of a founder who founded a business. Oh, that'll be a little confusing, but a founder of a family, a founder of now we have 33 grandchildren, one on the way in the oven, as it's been said. But today, our guest is amazing figure, amazing man, director of business development at G Fedale, I believe, roofing, and the director of charity relations of Roofs from the Heart, which is an unbelievable organization we're going to get into as well. There's more to say, but I should just probably let them talk to you all in the audience. So, Glenn Sr., Pop G, thanks for coming on the Culture Matters podcast. It's really an honor to have you.
Well, I am so happy to be on this. Um, Jay, just thrilled to interact with you and have a discussion around subjects that are near and dear to my heart. And I'm just happy to be here and interact and just have a conversation with you.
This is the Culture Matters podcast. So I think it's fitting that I start, tactically. I want to give a shout out to you're a teacher, educator within your organization. As far as there's a book club, from what I understand, where actually
Yes,
employees come together to learn. Can you unpack why
sure,
that started in the first place, and what are some of the
absolutely,
benefits?
absolutely. So, my sons, who the three of them run the business, and they brought me in about 10 years ago to help take the business to the next level. And in the midst of that, they reached out to me and asked me if I would be interested in doing a um, leadership development course. And I said I would be, because that's something near and dear to my heart, developing leadership development and mentoring. But I said, in order for that to happen, I need some legs to this. And they looked at me with that glassy eyed look and said, "Well, what do you mean?" And I said, "Well, here's how this should go. If someone is to be considered for a promotion within G Fidel, um, they need to take my course." And they agreed to that. And the one of the motivating factors was I thought it made sense and to develop leadership internally as opposed to bringing people in from the outside, because as your podcast focuses on, it impacts the culture
Hmm.
typically in a negative way, bringing someone in from the outside. So that's how that started. So what I've done is I took 6 months initially to interview people that I knew in different industries at high levels, and asked for them to share with me what they did for leadership development. And I was shocked, to be honest with you, that no one was doing it the same way.
Wow.
And all that did was confirm to me that I would develop my own leadership development course. And that's what I did. So I went out and read probably 30, 40 books around leadership. There's a lot of things written and published around that, and then narrowed it down to 5. So we have a 6-month course where we have 5 books that I've chosen, and I focus on 1 or 2 chapters for the class. And then one of the months we go outside for an off-site visit to a company either in our industry or outside and meet with one of the executives, and they share their journey with their experience. You know, how they started, how they got to where they are, the challenges, the obstacles, how they overcome, they came. It's awesome. It really is for them to hear that directly from, leadership of other companies. And then there's at the end of the course, they have to present an idea that's going to be beneficial to G Fedale. And I always qualify that by it can't be a heavy lift and there can't be a big expense to it. Otherwise, it's not going to be considered seriously. And much to my pleasant surprise, over the years, it's been tremendous. The ideas that have been brought forward, the thoughtfulness, the preparation, because they have to present it to the class and the ownership of G Fedale. We go to it off-site, like the University Whist Club, nice venue, and then they present it. And we've adopted some of the ideas. So that's how that started and came about. And
Wow.
we're actually ending up this year's course. Next week is the last class, and then the present will be in probably November.
When you were early on meeting with others before you started it, and you were meeting with various pundits, what were some, that had teachings and so on? What were some of the variables that stuck out to you? You mentioned that everyone did things differently, but were there patterns that you recognize or things that stuck
So,
out?
yeah, great question. So the larger companies obviously made sense for them to outsource leadership development. Because they just didn't have the full infrastructure to be able to support such a big endeavor. The smaller companies, medium-sized, smaller companies, they just would do it different ways. One company would throw out an idea of an activity or an event. In the summer, they'd bring in 7 or 8 people that they thought could be potential leaders and ask who wanted to take ownership of this. And they said to me, typically only one or two people would usually raise their hand to take ownership. And they said, those were our future leaders. And I said, are you kidding me? They said, absolutely. They said, it works. Those 1 or 2 people that would raise their hand to take ownership were our future leaders. And it's worked year over year. And then some of the real small companies would just narrow it down to a couple candidates, bring them in, interview them, ask them some questions, and make a decision based on that as to how they responded to some of the questions. So like I said before, there wasn't any consistent pattern across the board. It just depended on the size of the company and some of the things that they were used to doing as far as vetting out future leaders.
For those that are listening that may be, employed in an organization that doesn't offer this, but they have a sense of ownership of bettering themselves as leaders, what direction would you guide them in of what types of books to read and how to approach that and bring that into their organization? So
another great question.
Thanks.
So I would say that, like I said, there's a number of books, publications around leadership. I would say to them is to maybe reach out to someone in their network that in another company and ask them how they handle, vetting out potential leaders, to give them some insight on how they may go about it within their company. And then 2, obviously the internet's always a good tool to at least get a foundation and some insight on leadership development, and then pull from it what makes sense to them, what they feel comfortable with. so that they can take that and then kind of make it inherent to their own character as far as what type of questions to ask potential leaders that they think might be in their company. But again, those two things stick out. Just like use your network, use people you know, ask them what their company does, and then just do a little research on your own and adopt it inside.
What is it? What do you think it does for someone to have? It seems like a field trip almost, where they're meeting people that have risen the ranks of organizations. What does that do for someone that's trying to move up?
Yes. So I think it brings to the clarity that everybody has a different journey
Mm,
within different industries, that there's just not one set way. And also that even if you encounter what you think are major obstacles in your career path, you're not alone in having to face them. And to hear the stories of how other people have overcome them, I think is really good for young people to hear. Well, even middle-aged and older, because it just shows you what can be accomplished when
mm.
you put your mind to something.
What do you say to the listener that is in a position of authority? Their organization, they're thinking, who has time for that? I need him. I need him. I need money. I'm trying to make as much as I can. This sounds great. Nice guy. What's you're going to make an argument for them on how there's an ROI for their organization if they
Yeah, absolutely. So my
you're
response
laughing.
to that would be, so in a leader as a in a leader, you're in a leadership position, so you're trying to drive your company to be successful, to have a culture that's positive. You really want to be empathetic and have emotional intelligence when you're dealing with the people that work for you, because the best leaders are those that are thoughtful and they're sensitive and empathetic. And here's what happens when you have people working for you that sense that in someone that's a leader, they'll run through a brick wall for you.
Wow.
And not to bring it down, to dumb it down too much to like revenue and profit, but that just all that does is kind of accelerate that process and make it a very positive environment to achieve that.
Mm. And okay, so at the end of this semester, in a sense, people are put in a position to test their ideas before the group. What changes have you seen in people when they've gone from not ever standing before a group and sharing an idea to having done so? I could imagine that would be pretty profound in some
It
context.
really is, because as you well know, a lot of people have a fear of getting up in front of people that either they know or don't know, and either speaking or communicating an idea. And this allows them to develop a skill set that can help them either within G Fedale, or if their career takes them someplace else, or even in their relationships personally, to be able to feel comfortable sharing things that they're potentially passionate about and thoughtful about. It's
Mm.
I've just seen the dramatic change in people that have gone through the course and have gotten up and in front and communicated their ideas, to now they're someone a little different when it comes to interacting with them. It really is cool.
Have there been people that have never read before that then became bibliophiles, like book addicts or just learning machines?
Well, again, that's an interesting question. I wouldn't go that far. That's a but I have people have shared with me over the years, how it's opened their eyes
Mm.
to some of the subjects we cover about, crucial conversations, when you have tough conversations, whether they're personally or career wise, how to deal with them, how react to them. One of the other favorite books is um, the um, the one that deals with difficult conversations as well, that kind of continues to help people to be able to communicate in a fashion that's effective and, being responsive. So what I think what pleases me and what makes me most happy about it, that it just allows people to develop skills that maybe they didn't typically have before or hadn't developed from a career sense and a personal sense.
Mm. Yeah. What's so tough about having those difficult conversations in a work environment, you think?
So what's tough about them is you don't always know where that conversation is going to go. And especially if it starts off in a confrontational way. And again, that could be with a peer or that could be with a potential client. Now, you want to be able to have, the ability to respond to that in a way that's positive, that's not emotional, and that's going to take the conversation to a safe place where you can diffuse if there's any emotion involved. Because once emotion gets involved in a conversation, people shut down. They really do. And
Mm.
the two factors that usually come into play are either fear or run away.
Fight or flight kind of thing.
Fight and flight. Neither of them are any good, and they're
Mm.
not beneficial. And if you're
For those,
if you're a sales
oh,
guy, it's
go ahead. Yeah.
that's tragic.
Why?
Because
Why?
well, if you got a customer that runs, I mean runs a fight or flight, and if you have a customer that fights, and then it's a really difficult situation to try to get them back to
Mm.
a safe place where you can have a conversation.
For those that aren't familiar with G Fidel, what do you do? What do you guys do? What do you offer in gals and
So G Fedale is a regional subcontractor for roofing and siding and windows and gutters, anything basically on the outside envelope of a house or a building. And we get involved in commercial opportunities as well with the multifamily and HOAs and condos. That's basically our niche.
why is that important?
Well,
The
because
industry.
well, the industry is important because we're providing a needed service to people that live in either homes, apartments, condos that need like repair or installation of different things where stuff has gotten to the point that it's degraded, that you don't want it to continue, where their living space becomes unsafe.
Mm. Is it correct that your oldest son, Glenn Jr.,
Correct.
he started the company over 2 decades ago?
Correct.
And if I recall correctly, it was a former employer of his that kind of even helped him get his
Uh,
going.
Absolutely. That's a great story. It was a family friend
Wow.
who had a relatively small commercial roofing company, and Glenn went to work for him uh, for not too long of a time before he went to him and said, "Hey, I think I can do this." And Don mentioned that do what? And chuckling. I said, "Oh, start my own roofing company." But again, this gentleman was a great guy, and he told Glenn he would support him in whatever fashion he wanted to. Glenn was upfront and transparent.
Wow.
He started out only doing it on the weekends while he worked for him during the week, so he kept it above board, which was awesome. And then the first job he did was for his future mother-in-law, where I believe he made $900 in cash on the job, and it
Wow.
was just like lighting the fuse.
It sounds like that was some of the fruit of your course before you had it. Meaning it sounds like an emotional conversation to convince in one way or another your employer to support you creating a competition.
Very good
We can
insight,
unpack.
Jay. Very good insight, Jay.
It's interesting. You know what would you say that you're saying, but you mentioned upfront transparent. How important is that as a value set in your mind for business?
Oh, well, and I've said it to my sons over and over again, and then to people that I've mentored. Um, Whatever service or business that you're in, people want to do business with people they like and trust across the board. And once you establish that, I think that's a good focus to establish that first, the trust level, and just to be yourself, someone likable that someone would want to, have lunch with, go grab a drink with, just someone that they can talk to. Once you establish that you're someone that's likable and trustworthy, I mean, then the next phase of that relationship, you can probably sell them something.
Hmm. And yeah, you were in sales, what, in the late 70s you started in sales, or was it
I
even
did. I
that?
started off as an account representative for a nationwide printing company. Yeah, so I've been in sales for probably over 40 years.
Did it come naturally to you, or did you
Now,
have to really cut your teeth on it?
now that's a great question. I still remember driving with my district manager in the car with me and driving past a business park where there was a number of businesses, in this park. And he goes, "All right, Glenn, let's pull over and go in here." And I looked at him and I go, "But we don't know anybody here. We haven't called anybody." He goes, "You're right. We're going to go in and cold call these places." I thought to myself, "Are you serious, man?" And that's what I did. And I was so nervous about that, to be able to go and call. And I've just seen my color. So, yep. So my district manager would ride along with me, and as we drive past these business parks, he'd go, "All right, Glenn, pull in here." And I would say, "Well, why? We haven't pre-called them to set an appointment up." He goes, "No, no, no. We're going to cold call them." And I went, "Really?" And I became nervous, anxious. But I'll tell you what, because we'd go into these buildings and I'd ask to see payroll manager or the purchasing manager. And I'll probably 60, 70% of the time, they'd say, "Do you have an appointment?" And I go, "No." Is that person around? And they go, "We have to have an appointment." But one or two times they'd say, "Well, let me go back and check and see if they have any time to talk to you." And fortunately,
Wow.
even if I did 10 calls, fortunately, like maybe one or two people would actually come out to talk to me about who I was, what our company did. And my manager would just stand, like behind me in the background and let me talk and let me ask the questions about, did they have a present provider that was supplying this stuff? Were they happy with them? And it helped me develop a skill set as far as asking the right questions. It was, what do they call that by fire?
You like trial by fire?
Trial by fire. That's exactly what was going on. And it really, really helped.
How important do you think was it for that mentor to physically be there with you? Because I'm thinking there's an accountability in that, in a sense, but to
Well,
give you stand, let you
well,
do it.
here's how I thought it was important. And it didn't happen with me, but down the road, what occurred was that my company, in development of future salespeople or even managers, would put young people with me for me to mentor, and we go out on calls, and I tell them before we went into the call, "You're going to handle this call, and you're going to do the talking." And it was pretty funny sometimes. So in their mind, before we went, they'd learn the facts that they wanted to share in the conversation. But on numerous times, they say what they learned in their mind and they would stop. So we're sitting there,
Mm.
or standing there talking with this prospect, and all of a sudden the conversation would stop. And I would, yeah,
That's pretty funny. Yeah.
it's hilarious. Well, here's what I would do. I would let the awkwardness like go on for maybe about 5 to 10 seconds. And then I would jump in and say, "Wasn't that really, good information that Leslie shared with you? Here's what else." that we're about.
Mm.
And then after the call, I would go to the person that was riding with. I said, seriously, you just stopped talking?
What what about the value in questions when you're building rapport in a relationship with someone that you
Yeah, it's huge in learning and knowing about the right questions to ask. And I'm a big believer is, especially on the first call, if you can integrate semi-personal questions into your pitch just to get to learn a little bit about that person. Like if you get pulled into their office and behind their desk they have, like plaques of sports achievements or professional teams or college teams. Well, there's subject matter for you to kind of go into to
Mm.
talk about. If they have pictures, like if someone came into my office, even though I don't, and I have pictures of 32 grandchildren behind me, what do you think's important to me?
Mm.
Uh, my grandchildren. So it's being observant and sensitive to the surroundings are, because you never want to start off and jump right into business
Mm.
with a prospect, because they hear that all the time. They get that all the time. You just, I mean, you kind of want to lead into that after you have a conversation with them where you're asking them some interesting questions that cause more conversation, and then they get comfortable with you, and then they start sharing with you, and then when you ask them, so, what's your relationship with your present vendor, or is there a pain point or whatever, they're more apt to share that with you once they've had some conversation with you.
How do you keep energy high, stamina high in sales? Like, what would be your advice to our listeners that many of them
Eat a,
are in sales, even if they
eat a
don't
lot of
know they
eat a lot of chocolate.
are? Wait, really?
No, no. So I that's another great question, because in sales you could have a great month of achievement and revenue, but guess what? If you have a great March, April 1st, you start off at zero, and you just need to mentally have that focus that you're I I used to tell my sons ABS, always be selling. And that's the truth. Not to be overbearing or boring or whatever, but if you're out and about and talking to people, you just find out where they work, what's important to them, because they could be a potential prospect. And that's how I kept my energy high. That there's always opportunities out there for you to develop and go after. And you
Mm.
and again, in sales and business development, you really have to have the long game perspective, that you're in this for the long haul. And meeting people, it may not be the person that you meet that ends up buying something from you. It could be someone they know that they can
Mm.
introduce you to. And boy, I'll tell you what, I share that all the time, because it's been proven over and over again that people that you meet know someone that can probably be a customer.
Um, I want to ask first. I have too many questions. First, if you were to distinguish for our audience a little bit more clearly for them, sales and business development, how would you distinguish between the two?
Okay, another great question. So sales is the day, like in my mind, is the day-to-day closing of an opportunity that leads to a revenue result. Business development is the ability to have a relationship with someone that is in a position to lead you to a revenue result down the road. And that takes more time, that takes more effort, that takes more patience on the business development side. Now, having said that, you want your salespeople and your business development people to have a DNA of wanting to close sales. You want that DNA. But your business development people have to have that emotional intelligence to be able to leverage that DNA to realize that it's a long game that they're investing in.
Is the is there is would you distinguish it with like incoming, outgoing, in the sense if people are calling us, we're converting them on the phone? Business development, we're going out into the world and kind of, or is
I mean,
that, could that I get be seen at either side of it, or
yeah, well, I see, and I'm referencing my experience in my business. Not so much people calling in that you're closing on the phone, because again, that doesn't, even in a sales perspective, that doesn't happen a lot in our business. It's more often you're going out from a sales perspective, you're going out to someone's house or building to try to share with them how you're going to solve a problem. And then, maybe you close that call, but usually it takes two or three calls, even a sales perspective. Business development, you're going out to share with someone who you are, what expertise your company has to be able to resolve their issues 3, 6, 9 months, a year down the road.
Hmm. A lot of our listeners are either they have family businesses or desire to have children that would be a part of them in one way or another. What do you think it is about your family values or philosophy that has led to uh, three men that have come from you and your wife that are working together and
Well, yeah,
doing
and you
this
know
whole?
what? I didn't realize it at the time, but again, I think I set a environment and culture in the family that their dad was someone who was focused and hardworking, who went to work every day, who took his job seriously, who didn't come home and complain when he had a tough day. I think just building that culture, they got a good, clear picture of what it was to be a dedicated, focused sales guy who achieved.
Oh, have you always been a close family?
Yes, which is another huge factor too. Everyone looks out for one another, which is awesome to see, especially as they were young and as they grew up. Kind of they had each other's back, and again, I think that's all about the environment that they grew up in. We were very, very supportive. We're a Christian based family who you were led by God's principles in biblically on how you interact and treat people, and how the father is the head of the home, but is a partner in raising family with his
We have a
wife.
new generation coming up. Does that actually work?
Yes,
Why?
because, and I see it more now. I see it now than I did before, because I have sons and daughters that are coming back to me now, sharing how beneficial the values were of how we raised them, and they're using the same value structure and how they raise their families. You can't. There's nothing more gratifying and exciting than to hear that from the children that you raised.
And there are, in this younger generation now, many are opting out of even having any children. And a lot of that I read in these articles, maybe they're true, maybe they're not, about, how expensive it is to raise children. How did you raise 10? Were you a bank robber on Sundays? Then now you haven't been caught, so it's
I'll tell
not
you what.
the
One of my
can't get in
daughters.
trouble anymore.
So one of my daughters, I think when she was in second or third grade, one of the class discussions was, "So, what does your father do for a living?" So, so wait, listen to this. So she, this is what. So we had, I think we might have had eight or nine kids at the time. She answers, "My dad's a dog walker." And so listen, she comes home. So the teacher goes, "No, he's not." And she goes, "Yes, he is. He walks dogs for a living." And the teacher goes, "There's no way your father supports your size family by walking dogs." But she was convinced that that's how I earned a living, by walking dogs. I don't know. I still to this day don't know where that came from or why, but it was a hilarious story. But to your point, you just, I mean, we didn't take extravagant vacations. Obviously, we go down to the beach once in a while. You just do without certain things based on size of your family and how you want to have them grow up. There was no lack. They were lacking for nothing, and it I think it gives you an opportunity to build even stronger relationships with your
Mm,
children because they start to see the value of them loving their brothers and sisters and then the love they receive from their mom and dad.
mm. Well, I've had a couple guests recently talk about family dinners. It just naturally arose. What's your take on family dinner? Like,
Huge,
okay.
huge opportunity for everyone to get together. I was home at 6 o'clock, by 6 o'clock every night. Everybody knew that, everybody expected that. And we'd sit down at a big table, and then conversation would happen. Sometimes young guys didn't get a chance to speak or say anything just because there were so many people. But it was an opportunity for everybody to sit together, be together, and then talk, and for us to ask questions to them. It was huge opportunity.
And how many boys and girls? What was the
Six girls, four boys. So that's why there wasn't much room for talk with the boys. I'm sorry for the female population out there.
Wow, that's so amazing. And now the what do you think it was about Glenn Jr.'s rise and his you know founding this organization all those years ago that would have led to his brothers wanting to participate? And are the girls involved directly or more
The,
indirect?
one or two were early on, but then they kind of just went out on their own in their own career development. So out of the six girls, four of them went into the medical field and became nurses before they became
Wow.
moms, and the other two went in, one in the business, and well, both the other two went into business, but obviously they're all now moms raising families. But Glenn's journey was just someone who was, and not everybody has this, the DNA of high risk, high reward. He just, he was a risk taker, but he had the vision that, there was a high reward involved, and he wasn't afraid to take risks. And Jay, I mean, this, not everybody has that in them just because of the anxiety and the fear that you're going to fail.
Mm,
But that he didn't, and or if he did, he suppressed it. So he was able to channel that into areas that led him to the success that he has now.
wow. And are you proud of him?
Oh my goodness. The big smile on my face says yes. I tell people all the time when they talk about the business, and I proudly say my oldest son started the business out of his house and developed and evolved it into, we're one of the major subcontractors in this region. It's unbelievable. It really is. God's blessed, and I truly believe this. God's blessed our family and our business and continues to do so because of the way we handle what he's given us.
Mm. Well, and yeah, when it comes to blessings, roofs in the heart. When was that started? Why? What was the
So
inspiration?
yeah, so 7, 8 years ago, we wanted to give back to the community that we served here in Delaware, and we started a Facebook campaign where we would give free roofs to people that had gone through tough situations in life or got stricken medically. We just wanted to have an opportunity to help those people. So it was friends and family of the Fedale family, and then the Fedale business. So it was from a friend of one of my daughters who contracted cervical cancer,
Mm.
or a young married couple with two children whose husband contracted cancer and passed away. And then they're living in a house where the roof becomes compromised and they need a new roof. Well, the last thing in the world they need to worry about is putting a new roof on. So it allowed us an opportunity, and people would nominate these people on Facebook. We'd get like 40 or 50 nominations, and we'd try to narrow it down to 5 and then pick 3. That was really difficult because they're all compelling stories. They all have, like emotional ties to them. So for the first couple of years, we were just giving away 2 or 3 roofs at a time away. And then evolving out, someone like 2 or 3 years ago said, Pop G, had you ever thought about starting a nonprofit? And I said, no. Well, tell me why. So they said, well, you'll be able to reach more people. Your messaging will get out to more people. You'll develop a brand, and like-minded people who want to impact those in need or in the low-income housing scenario might give you money. So that journey started. My sons, with a big smile on their face, said, all right, Dad, go forth and start this thing.
Wow.
So I went forth and just started talking to a lot of different people about our focus and mission. And that's how it evolved. And now, we're at a place now where, we have a board of 8 members. We've put on a number of roofs where, we're working with actually communities now, and individuals. It's really, really something to behold how it's developed.
And shout out to how we met, because it was you supported a gala, for North 10th that we're like deeply partnered with. Shout out to Josh Claris and Nikki Baggy, both been on the Culture Matters podcast. If you're listening to this episode, shout out to Chase. I think that's episode 49. And now here we are. Right? We met
Yes.
through contribution, and now you're on the show, and I get to learn about the hacks you've used to create this generational success that we're trying to do. It's unbelievable how that works.
It is. It really is, man. Jay, what you're doing is so awesome because you're bringing in people from different communities, different backgrounds, different cultures, and having a discussion with them so that other people can see and react to. I mean, the platform that you're developing is awesome, Jay. You're really to be commended for that.
Thank you. What are the consequences if one is, let's say, in a predicament where their roof is not, it's not going well? What are the consequences? Like, so somebody that could be a recipient of Roofs in the Heart.
Sure.
What are the
So
consequences? They don't fix that roof. How does that actually impact their life in a negative way if their roof is not right?
So what typically happens is if a roof is failing, you then start to get water coming in inside the house, and that could start from showing up on the walls like with little bubbles. I'm sure everyone has seen that you see on the walls. And then but here's the thing: if it's not addressed, that continues down the wall to the floor, and then potentially mold develops. And I think everyone realizes and knows the devastating effects that mold can have on health situations. And especially if there's children in the house, it becomes an even greater scenario because, if the roof's failing and the inside of the house starts to look like it's not a safe place, I mean, children typically will recluse to their room, and play on their video games, not come out. They won't invite friends over. So it really impacts the development, the social and development of children if they're involved in that house situation. Besides the health situation, if you have elderly people in there, then you're talking about breathing issues and other health issues. So it's a downward spiral if you do not take care of the roof situation.
How many people patch it and forget it, you think? Or
A
like,
lot.
is that's like an epidemic in itself, I would think. Just like
It is. I mean, because you know how it is. They'll look up at the wall and see bubbles, and for whatever reason in their mind, it gets translated to no big deal. I mean, I'll take care of that next week, or I'll have someone look at it next week, and that never happens, and it just continues to get worse.
can mold destroy a house?
Yeah, I mean, if it's not dealt with, it just continues to eat away. It just continues to eat away at the, at the drywall, at at the other thing. I mean, it's just devastating. It really is. And then you have to And then you have to have special companies come in to deal with the mold, not to get too extra, but then your vision of, like in the movies, of guys in hazmat suits coming in and, like, and dealing with mold. I mean, it's not a pretty picture if it gets to that point.
Those that are listening that either are in a predicament like that or have someone they're associated to, where can they apply to potentially
Sure.
have
Yes. So
the recipient of
again,
Roots of the Heart?
yeah, it's Roofs from the Heart. And there, you can go up on the website, roofsfromtheheart.org, www.roofsfromtheheart.org. There's an application process that they can pull down, and with a phone number, and someone to contact if they have an issue. Kate Demansky, who works with me at Roofs from the Heart. So there's a number of vehicles, or you can post my number up on here, that if they want to have a further discussion about if they're eligible and that sort of thing, I'd be glad to talk to them and help and direct them to talk to Kate, or she can help them with the application if that's the case.
One of your organization's, G Fedale's values is grit. Why is that one of the values?
So I think grit's one of the values just because of the nature of sales and dealing with people, and dealing with pushback or rejection. It's not for everybody, sales, but if you develop grit, you develop the skill set to be able to deal with rejection or negative responses, and it also helps you push forward. So if you're a person with grit, obstacles become opportunities. Again, it's not easy to visualize that in your mind, but to your question, having grit allows you to do that.
What are some misnomers about your industry that people may not? So, like right now, I'm in my house, in the office. Somebody knocks on my door. Maybe they see something I don't understand with my roof, or like, what are some of the things I should know?
Nah, close the door in their face. Don't talk.
Yeah, you need grit. Shut the door. Oh, that's
I want to see if they knock again.
Yeah, like the lay person, right? That doesn't understand. You asked me about my strength, I could tell you, but nothing to do with a roof. So for our listeners that don't understand, what are some of the misnomers in your
Well, I think, yeah,
aware of?
I think some of those misnomers are that, roofers or contractors are only out there to either say, on the roofing perspective, you need a new roof, regardless of what's going on with your roof, or another contractor dealing with something else, like with, if it's windows or something, you need, as opposed to taking a look at the scenario itself and making suggestions as to what can be done to mitigate the potential issue that they see, because that's kind of how we build our business and our reputation, that we become advisors, trusted advisors. Again, that word trust, to the potential, homeowner, clients that, live in a home and there's issues going on, because it's, you live in a home, stuff starts to fail over year, whether it's the roof, whether it's the siding, whether it's the windows. It's just, that's what happens. Stuff ages, just like our bodies. We age, stuff starts to break down, but the sooner you address it early on, the better, and the more longevity you build in to it. So, and again, that's what helps us build our reputation, because we're going to provide like a narrative of, okay, your roof has a minor issue here that you can deal with, that'll give it another 5, 7, 10 years of life before you have to consider replacement. As opposed to, if you don't deal with the minor issue, 6 months, 9 months from now, you may need to replace the roof as opposed to dealing with a minor repair that'll give it that much more life.
Mm.
So we're very strong about providing that type of narrative so that someone can make an intelligent business decision about their home, because that's what it comes down to. Because I'm a homeowner too. I want to be able to look at the facts so that I can make an intelligent business decision about what's going on.
Mm. Oh, that reminds me when Adam on episode 294 was talking about excellence, the E in Fedale, that the quality is very important.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
yeah.
Go ahead. Yeah.
No. I'm just saying that's yeah. I mean, Adam's more like his mom. He has a very sensitive heart. Not that I don't, but he really does. And and I believe across the board, whether it's in personal relationships or business relationships, if you strive for excellence,
Mm.
even if you fall short, you're you're setting the bar so much higher
Mm.
that people get attracted to your business and yourself to want to align with.
Now, Alan, one of your other sons is the COO. Is that correct?
Correct.
What would you say is one of his attributes that makes him great at what he does with the families?
So
He paid me for
it's
this portion of the podcast.
so Alan's more of the you know the buck stops here a little bit scenario. So like if Adam has his vision of wanting to do something potentially that he thinks might work, Alan's the other side of that coin that says, well, Adam, this may cost this and take this long to do. Maybe we should consider another way. So he has a tremendous skill set and level of excellence and being able to do that in a way that's not confrontational, that doesn't rub his peers or clients the wrong way. And it's a real skill set to be able to do that.
Hmm. What about Adam? What would you say are some of his most endearing qualities that have made
Oh,
that sing?
empathy, very empathetic, emotional intelligence. And it's really interesting, Jay, that you asked that question, because if you typically think of a CEO, it's I always thought of a CEO of a company as someone that's hard nosed, you know, making really hard decisions with little personal insight. Um, and that's obviously not always the case. And Adam is a true example of that. When they're making decisions, he's keeping in mind the employees that look up to him as the leader of the company, and he has that strength, tremendous strength in that. Of course, he's probably learned. They both learned that all from their father.
That uh, how much has it been? How important? Now that makes me think like having fun and having that family, because the F in Fidel is family, as far
Yeah.
as I remember from that.
Yep.
So how important has that been over
Huge.
the
It's huge
years?
because if you think about it, and I'm sure you've had friends that have shared with you, when you go and take a job, you don't know what the environment or the culture is going to be like. Maybe in the interview process they've shared with you sometimes, oh yeah, we're a great company to work for, everybody likes each other, we do stuff together, and then you go there and it's like, dude, seriously, this is like a war zone here. But the effing family, so we strive for that. We want people to come to work that enjoy coming to work, that want to stay here longevity wise. Employees, I think that's another thing we're proud about. The length of time that employees stay with us, the reputation we have where people from other roofing companies want to come work for us, and they may take a lesser position job at a lower pay.
Wow.
Just because they want to come to work and enjoy the environment and enjoy coming to work. It's a huge, huge factor, because again, I go back to the thing, you have people that feel like they're part of a family. Again, they're going to go through a brick wall for you in efforts to help the company continue to be successful and grow. It's a huge factor.
Mm. in closing, I would say if there was one thing you want our listener to take from this conversation to put into action, like as soon as they, outside of having as many kids as possible,
Yeah, good
what, what,
qualifier, Jay. Good qualifier.
what would you say that they need to be doing, from today for part one?
So, yeah, I would say never ever shortchange yourself in what you can accomplish.
Hmm.
Because as we go back to, not everybody has grit, but I think that's a potentially learned skill set. You can develop some grit if you don't think you have any. But again, um, I'm a firm believer in hard work, being transparent, have a high sense of integrity. You're going to develop opportunities for yourself that you never realized I think were possible. Because people, again, like being around, want to be with people, want people to work with that they like and trust. And that's a common denominator on multiple levels.
Thank you so much for this, Pop G. You're the man. I can't wait to do part two and
Amen, brother.
bring you guys back. I could see, a big episode with all of us together sooner than later. So thank you all for listening to this episode of the Culture Matters Podcast. Please leave us a review on the Culture Matters Podcast and listen to episode 294, Adam Fedale, and we will see you next time. Thank you, my friend.
See ya. Bye bye.